Hello and welcome back to Bookmark Chronicles, and welcome to my December wrap up and January TBR. So I realized that I forgot to do my stats for November. We're gonna skip that. I'll do my stats for December, and then I will have an overall stats video for 2024 coming very soon. I'm gonna be looking off to the side to go through the stats on my spreadsheet, and I will pop them on the screen for you. But I read 8 books. One of them was a reread. I had 4 DNFs. I read 1,466 pages and listened to 78 hours of audio. 2 of the books that I read were fantasy, 1 was mystery, 3 were romance, and 2 were sci-fi. 4 I listened to on audio, 2 I read digitally, 1 I read physically with the audio, and 1 I read digitally with the audio. 6 of the books that I read were adult and 2 of them were young adult. My ratings for the month included 3 3.5 stars, 1 3.75 star, 1 4 star, 1 4.5 star, 1 4.75 star, and 1 5 star. All 8 of the books that I read were novels, and of the 4 authors that I read for the first time this year, 2 of them were new to me completely and 2 of them were repeats. First book that I attempted to read was Brown Sugar This Christmas. This is a book that I had gotten from a Stuff Your Kindle Day. It is the first in the Sag Harbor Black Romance series, and I DNF'd it because the female main character was fucking insufferable. She's such a bitch, not only during her first interaction with the male main character, but also with her friends. And I was just like, I can't root for you. I cannot. I'm gonna try to maybe pick up the next book in the series or something else by this author, because I like the concept of it, but I hated her so much. And then the second interaction, she's also a bitch, and it's just like piling onto this guy for literally no reason. Will not let him get a word in, and it's just excessively rude, and I don't understand what her problem is. Then I read Wyatt by Asia Monique. I gave this 4.75 stars. This is the first book in the Barlow Mafia family series that is a spinoff of Mafia Misfits, where we follow Wyatt Barlow, who we met in Sinful Enforcer, and he's in an arranged marriage to Analia Callahan, and I loved it. I loved both of the characters. Analia is deaf, so we do have that representation, and I think it was really well done. Wyatt is definitely a disrespect my wife and I'll shoot you, and that happens more than once, and I love it. Then Robin and I buddy read Heir of Navron, the final book in the Rhaenyra Revelation series by Michael J. Sullivan. I rated this 4.5 stars, and it was a very satisfying ending. I was really worried after that second book because I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel, but he really brought it home in the end, and there were a lot of twists and turns that I wasn't expecting, but that also made sense, and I'm really glad that I read that series. As I've said, anytime that I've mentioned this series, the only way that I can describe it is following Royce and Hadrian on random shenanigans, and it's a good time, honestly. So because I enjoyed this series, I will be joining Jashana's read-along for The World of Elon in 2025. So we'll be reading Age of Myth in January, and I'm excited for it. So then I DNF'd Pillow Thoughts by Courtney Peppernell. It's not that this is bad. This is a collection of poems, and she's actually a very good writer. Her poetry is very good. It's just that a lot of them are kind of sad, and I don't want to read that right now. I think the first section is, well, so like the first couple of sections are like about being in love and then being heartbroken, and then if you're lonely, if you're sad, if you're missing someone, and I'm just like, this is not what I need right now. So maybe I'll come back to this one day, but for now, I'm just gonna put it down, and we'll see if I come back to it at some point. Then I read Strictly Friends. This was a book that I had on KU. I rated it 3.5 stars. It was okay. It's a friends to lovers about a single mom whose son is at the age where he's starting to ask questions about his father, and he had walked out on them when her son was 2 years old. And so she knows where he is, but they have not been in contact, and so she's like, all right, I guess my son needs answers, so I need to go and confront him. But she has a best friend who she's been friends with for forever, since they were teenagers. And honestly, like, the way that everything wraps up was just kind of weird. Like, you know what to expect, but at the same time, I was just like, I don't feel like any of this is a valid excuse for any of the events that have happened here, and I don't support it. So it was fine, but I don't really know if I'd recommend it. Then I reread Iron Widow. This was one of my favorite books of 2021, and I reread it in order to prepare for Heavenly Tyrant, which is finally out. We waited like 3 years for this book. In this one, we're following a teenage girl whose older sister was conscripted into the army to be a concubine pilot. It is fully expected that concubine pilots are going to die in war because essentially the pilots use their life force to power these giant machines that in my head I kind of think of as Transformers, and they're fighting this war against like these alien things. Anywho, our main character wants revenge, so she decides to conscript as a concubine pilot for the same pilot that murdered her sister so that she can kill him. She manages to do that, becoming an Iron Widow. However, this government is not supportive of women having any sort of power, so they decide to pair her up with the most ruthless and brutal pilot, expecting that he's going to kill her, and that's not exactly what happens. So we follow her story from there. This one picks up pretty much right after the events of the first book, and this one I rated 5 stars again. This one I rated 3.5 stars, and it's because when we get to the end of this one, you have a certain expectation of how things are going to sort of move forward. There's also a huge cliffhanger that really wasn't addressed until the very end of this, and then the other plot points that were happening, while I understood why some of them had to happen that way, it wasn't what I wanted. Am I still going to continue the series? Yes. Am I going to reread these when the next book comes out? Yes. And I think that if I read this one physically, because I had an arc of it from Libro the first time, I think I will maybe enjoy it a little more. But yeah, at this point, I just don't really know how this story's, well, I have an idea of how it's going to end. I don't know if it's going to be what I want. Then I read The Christmas Killer by Alex Pine. This is the first book in a series. I also had an ALC of this from Libro. In this, a detective gets a package that includes a dead partridge and a Christmas card that is the 12 Days of Christmas themed. And in it, it says 12 nights, 12 murders, and all of them are getting what they deserve or something like that. And so he has to figure out who the killer is and try to stop them before they make good on their promise to murder 12 people. It was interesting. While I was able to predict who the killer was, it was still an unexpected one, because at first you're like, no, why would it be that person? And then you get into the other thing. So I do want to try to read the next book in the series. However, they're in like a small town, and it's kind of making me wonder like how many murders can occur in this small town, you know? But also they used to live in London, where he did finish up a case with a serial killer who had recently been released like right before they had moved to the small town. So I think that might come in the second book. We'll see. Then I DNF'd The Umber King by Jamie Applegate Hunter. This is a romantasy that follows a fae girl. Not a romantasy fan, I'm not a fae fan, but I really like this author and I wanted to give it a try. And honestly, the world is pretty cool. I will give it that. I just knew that I wasn't gonna care. And it's also very long. It's like 400 something pages, and it's a duology. I just had to let it go. But we are following Rory. When she was a teenager, she witnessed her twin sister get murdered, and so she wants to get revenge. She wants to find the person who stole her sister's soul. And so Rory and her sister, they can only see things in shades of gray, black, and white. However, she can see the color of people's souls. So while she is searching for the person who stole her sister's soul, she comes across people who have black souls, meaning that they are the worst people. They're destined to go to hell, and she becomes a vigilante serial killer in the process. So very cool world, very cool plot, just in a setting that I don't care for. Then I also DNF'd Prince of Hearts. This is another book that I've gotten from a Stuff Your Kindle day, and it's about this guy. I don't really know what his deal is. However, he ends up having a one-night stand with a cartel princess, and somehow shenanigans were supposed to ensue from there. I didn't make it very far because their first interaction, he's a complete fucking asshole to her, and I was just like, I'm not feeling it. I don't like it. I don't like when our main characters are mean to each other. It just doesn't work for me. You can be mean to everyone else in the world, just don't be mean to your significant other. So I quit. Might also try to continue this series or read another one by this author, but we'll see. Then I finally finished the Burning Kingdom series with The Lotus Empire. I enjoyed this, however, this one just felt so long, and I think I just wanted us to get to the point. Also, I probably should have done a reread of the first 2 books. This follows The Jasmine Throne and The Oleander Sword, both of which I rated 4 stars. And this one I rated 3.5 stars. I just didn't enjoy it as much, but there were also some characters that I was like, I feel like I should remember you, but I don't. And then there were new characters that I didn't necessarily love, and the ending's satisfying enough. It just wasn't as good as the first 2, in my opinion anyway. And lastly, I read Love and Other Things by Christina C. Jones. This is her very first publication that came out in 2013, making it a goal to go through her backlist, and I will be vlogging that process. This one follows 3 friends who are all in the process of finding love. So it's basically like romance companion novels, but in one. So each of them has their own section of the book, and then the epilogue, we catch up with everyone. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. I rated it 4 stars, and I'm excited to read more by her. But that's everything that I read in December. Now I'm going to go on to my January TBR. Some of this stuff is a little up in the air because I'm not quite sure if I'm still gonna read certain things, but first is Age of Myth. As I mentioned, I will be joining Deshauna in her World of Elon read-along. I don't know what Age of Myth is about. I like Michael J. Sullivan's writing though, so I'm just gonna go with it. This is the first book in the Legends of the First Empire series, which has 6 books, and that is all I know. Another one of my goals is to read 2 books off of my physical shelves each month, starting with A Drop of Venom. So I don't really know what this is about. I think it is maybe some sort of Medusa retelling. I'm not 100% sure. However, it's written by Sajni Patel, who I really enjoy as a romance author, and this is her, I think her first fantasy. This also has a sequel coming out in 2025, so I am excited to read it. I'm hoping I'm gonna like it. No, I didn't read the synopsis. No, I'm not going to. The other book from my shelves that I'm going to read is I Can Make This Promise. I believe this is an Indigenous middle grade. I feel like Ashley from Realm of Kidlit and Comics had talked about this. I don't know if it was last year or the year before at some point, but she really enjoyed it, and that is why I got it. So I'm hoping that I like it. I don't really know what it's about. I'm not gonna lie to you, I have no clue, but I think I'm gonna like it. I love middle grade, honestly. I need to read more of it. Then I will be reading The Snow Killer. This is another ALC that I got from Libro. I don't know what it's about, other than someone potentially killing in the snow. I think it'll be a little similar to The Christmas Killer. Hopefully, maybe. This one might also be the first in the series. I don't know. So the next 3 things are maybe. First, Robin and I might be reading Cameron Battle and the Escape Trials. This is the finale to the duology. We started it last year, really enjoyed that first book. We might read it this month. We might read it in February. Whenever we get to it, I will let y'all know. Then the next CCJ series that I want to read is the Trouble series. The first one I believe is called The Trouble with Love. I don't know much about this series. I know there are 3 books, but I don't know if I know anybody who has read them, or at least not recently. But again, I'll be vlogging this process, so I'll have more information in that, which will likely come out in either February or March. And my last possible is Outrage by Brian Copeland. So this was on Kindle Unlimited, thank goodness, because I have an arc of the next book, which I did not realize was a part of a series. This other one is called Shadows of Justice, and so it's produced by Black Odyssey Media. I know that the second book is about siblings. One is a reporter and one is a detective, and I assume they're solving crimes together. In that second book, they're following the case with a missing Black woman whose disappearance is tied to a suburban housewife. And so I guess they're trying to figure out what happened, where the connection came from, and all of that. I honestly don't know what this first book is about. I didn't realize that it was part of a series. It's not listed that way anywhere. So I have to go back to that first one, since that is the introduction for the characters. Hopefully I like it, and I'll continue and go on to the arc. So those are all of the books that I read in December and what I'm planning to read in January. Let me know if you have read any of these or if they're on your TBR. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you in the next video.